gentlemen, may I have your attention, please? The show starts in 3, 2, 1, go.
Good morning, CaneSport. It's January the 22nd, 2024. I'm Gary Ferman, the publisher of CaneSport.com, joined this morning by our recruiting workaholic, Stephen Wagner, as we discuss the news of the day, the news of the past several days, the news of the days to come. This is literally going to be the Stephen Wagner Good Morning CaneSport Hour because so much recruiting action is going on, and Stephen's been right in the middle of it. So let's get right to it. Put that defunct golf tournament hat on. All right, cool.
The Honda Classic that no longer exists.
No longer exists. Yeah. So anyway, we got Junior Day coming up this weekend. We got the Battle 7-on-7 tournament coming up this weekend. So it'll be all hands on deck. No doubt about it. So much going on, a star-studded list coming together. But that doesn't mean there wasn't a lot going on over the last couple of days and over the weekend, because when Mario Cristobal is conducting business in Coral Gables, it's always about recruiting. So, Stephen, let's talk a little bit about a few of these stories. I'm going to start with Washington offensive lineman Nate Aleppo, a transfer portal guy, maybe one of the better players in the transfer portal right now. Miami did a great job and was able to get him to come in for an official visit this weekend. Now, a lot of drama playing out here, and we're not really sure where this is going, unfortunately, but it looks like he left Miami and went to Ole Miss, okay? But we have not been able to confirm his arrival in Oxford as of late last night. So we will be on this case today. And try to figure out what is going on with Nate Aleppo. He is a guy that started for Washington at left guard. If he comes to Miami, with all respects to Matthew McCoy, to Louis Cristobal, he's going to be the starting left guard. All right, if he comes here. So the fact that they're recruiting him, and I think this is an amazingly wise move by Mario and Alex Mirabal, is that they realized that in losing Javion Cohen, that their offensive line is not as strong going into 2024 as it was in 2023. Matthew McCoy is a good prospect, but has not played a ton of football. Louis Cristobal is a little overmatched because of his size, and they are going to need to probably be better. And we certainly saw that against Rutgers in the bowl game where Matthew McCoy and Cristobal split time. They're going to probably need to be better than that if they want to have the same level line as they want to have. So that is why they would go in the portal and try to get Aleppo. So he came in and visited. From all accounts that we've gotten, the visit went well. We have had some communication with him, but we didn't get a definitive verdict last night. And they were expecting him at Ole Miss. Okay, so I'm guessing Miami tried to get him to cancel that Ole Miss visit. And right now we are assuming he probably went to Ole Miss. And, that's never a good thing, obviously, in recruiting. I mean, you would like to have gotten a commitment while he was here. But Stephen, I like the fact that there's a recognition of always looking to make the roster better, not worrying about hurting feelings. We've been watching it the last few days with quarterback recruiting. They've got a commitment from Luke Nickel, who had a very good year as a quarterback last year. I'm sure he'll probably have another really good year this year. But they're not just saying, okay, geez, we got Luke Nickel coming in, we could stop recruiting quarterbacks, because you saw what they went through this year. And now you don't know. Cam Ward's definitely going to be gone after this year. We don't know what Jakari Brown is going to do. Emory Williams, you hope is going to be here for the long haul. got to play a little bit this year. He got hurt. It's not his fault that he got hurt. But this is going to be, you got Judd Anderson coming in. Like, this is going to be a serious competition. And let's not forget Reese Poppenberger, who they brought in through the transfer portal. So, like, they're not worrying about what they have. They are constantly trying to make this roster better, Stephen.
Yeah, so just touching on the quarterbacks thing real quick, because I know that some people on our message boards have been asking me, and I do I want to kind of use this opportunity to speak on this a little bit. So right now, Miami, they're very happy with Luke Nickel. There's a lot of excitement about him. He's coming off a really awesome junior season. Right now, I think he's getting a lot of interest from some really big programs, and I think rightly so. Georgia, for instance, is a school that's really started to show some serious interest toward him. Kirby Smart actually went out to his school last week he went out to his school last week to check up on him. Florida State dropped by as well. And Mario Cristobal and Shannon Dawson are expected to be out in Georgia to check up on him here in the coming week. I believe that visit's happening on Wednesday, so we're going to make sure that we're still monitoring that. But yeah, Miami is still out and looking at other I shouldn't say looking at, but they are continuing to converse with other quarterbacks. They're still talking to these other guys, and they're still recruiting these other guys. And right now, Miami does not have plans to take more than one quarterback in this class. That's as of right this second. However, as Gary alluded to, things change all the time. And you have no guarantee what that quarterback room is going to look like next year. Let's say Cam Ward leaves, Reese Poffenberger decides, hey, I'm probably not going to be able to surpass Emory Williams, so I'm going to leave too. Emory has some sort of other injury that's going to hold him back. And Judd Anderson says, hey, Miami's not all I thought it was going to be. I'm going to leave. So now all of a sudden you would be stuck with theoretically Emory Williams and Luke Nickel in that class. At that point, you probably would need to start looking at taking other quarterbacks in the 2025 class. Now, right now, that's not the plan. Miami's pretty convinced Luke Nickel is their guy. He performed really, really well. Miami thinks, man, that's our dude. However, if something does come up and all of a sudden Miami start scrambling and saying, man, we really do need extra numbers in the quarterback room, and we've maintained good relationships with some of these other 2025 guys, okay, maybe we can take a look at one of them, and maybe we can look at adding a second quarterback in this class. Not to mention, I mean, who's to say that Luke Nickel doesn't go ahead and get that Georgia offer? He goes over to Athens, which is right there in his backyard. He gets down there for an official visit, and all of a sudden he goes, holy crap, man, this is an opportunity I can't pass up on. And he flips to Georgia. Who's to say that won't happen? So Miami is going to continue to fully evaluate all of their recruiting options up until the moment that we actually get to the early signing period. And even in that case, during the early signing period. But, especially in the transfer portal, I really don't believe that you can ever be too greedy whenever it comes to recruiting, whether that's through traditional high school recruiting or the transfer portal. If you have one 5-star, great. Get a second. If you have 2 5-stars, great. Go get a third. Because at the very, very least, the worst case scenario, you're going to get an iron sharpens iron situation that that Nick Saban had at Alabama for the last 15 years, or like Kirby Smart now has at Georgia, where you get 5-star offensive linemen going up against 5-star defensive linemen. And all of a sudden, even the guys who don't play, by the time they get to the point where they actually are ready to get on the field, they are really, really freaking good. Because you know what they've been doing these last 4 years? They've been going up against 5-star offensive linemen, against massively talented prospects every single day in practice. So at the very least, it's going to deepen your roster. I really don't believe there's such a thing as being too greedy whenever it comes to talent acquisition. Because fact of the matter is, most coaches, it doesn't take very long for them to figure out, okay, this guy is going to be able to play someday, or this guy isn't going to be able to play someday. I mean, coaches, for the most part, they can pretty quickly tell when they've landed a stud, whenever they've landed a guy who just needs a little bit more development, or whenever they just missed and they said, man, we thought we had really high grades on this guy. It didn't turn out the way we thought it was going to turn out. Maybe we do need to evaluate other options.
All right, now, but this iron sharpens iron. Obviously, I agree with it. I've been very clear for years that this roster at Miami is not good enough. Okay, and it hasn't been in a very long time, and it's not good enough now, and they have to improve it. I felt going into the portal that they needed to add 6, 7, 8 starters out of the portal this year, and obviously. They're making some movement. They probably brought in a defensive tackle starter. They brought in a quarterback starter. A couple safety starters probably. So they're moving in that direction pretty quick. But the one thing I will say is that it does not come without feelings. Like, guys are expecting, Matthew McCoy is sitting there right now expecting to be the starting left guard next year. Well, now all of a sudden you're bringing somebody in better than Matthew McCoy, which is great for the program, unquestionably. But if Matthew McCoy has a sense of entitlement as opposed to a sense of, I better get my act together and get better and compete, then he'll be the next one leaving on the way out into the transfer portal, which to me is fine. Like, if you don't want to compete and you don't want to, be the best version of you as a football player and get to the point where you're the dude and there is nobody in the transfer portal that's going to come in here and be better than you, then you probably don't have a lot of usefulness to the program anyway. That's the direction Mario's trying to take this thing. He wants a team of dudes that are competitive, that are striving every day to be the best they can be. And if you're not that guy, then you're a problem. Okay, you're holding the whole thing back. So this is going to be interesting to watch. Both with current players on the team, with recruits. If a recruit is nervous about who else you are recruiting at his position, he also is probably not the right guy, because if you're a high school 4-star, 5-star, and you're coming into a major college program and you don't believe in your heart that you're going to take on any comers and you're going to prevail, you're probably not going to be real good. I mean, that's just my opinion on it. Now, so this recruiting effort extended, even you look at this team and you're saying, well, they're pretty good at the running back position. Right, with Fletcher, Jay Allen, et cetera, et cetera. So you're thinking you're pretty good at running back. You got Citizen coming back. Hopefully he'll be able to make a contribution. But that didn't stop them from taking a visit this weekend from a kid by the name of Rodney Hill. Okay, he was a backup at Florida State. Okay, but he had carries in most of their games. He's the guy that's played some college football, went into the portal, came to Miami, and decided that even with a relatively deep running back room, that he was going to come be a Hurricane. So even they're even looking at the depth. I mean, Rodney Hill's not starting, okay, more than likely here at Miami. But it didn't stop him from coming here to compete. And to me, those are the kind of kids that you want. So real interesting time as they finish up their work in the portal. We will be all over this Aleppo situation here over the next 24 hours or so. And hopefully he does decide to come to Miami and be the starting left guard on next season's team. We'll see how that goes. Or certainly be in the competition to start at left guard with Matthew McCoy. And then it's up to Matthew McCoy to be better than him. But I don't think they'd be bringing Aleppo in if they didn't think that this guy that played for the national title contending team all year wasn't better than what they had. So it'll be really interesting. All right, so let's talk about recruiting. Obviously the big focus is cranking up on 2025, but Stephen, we're also seeing 2026 recruiting, maybe even a little toe dipping on 27, but mostly 26 and 25, and that has involved a couple tight end prospects. And it's really interesting watching Miami recruit these good tight end prospects because of the issues this year in using the tight end. I think it's a good sign that they are going to make damn sure that the tight end is back to being incorporated in this offense moving forward. We have gotten some signals that you might see Cam Ward under center a little bit more, which might contribute to that cause of getting the tight ends more involved in the offense with more of a pro style type attack than just the Shannon Dawson air raid that wasn't overwhelming last year, to be fair and honest. Shannon Dawson, if he's under the gun this year, in my opinion, he's got to put a better offense out on the field if he wants to have a long-term situation at Miami. And so that took them to recruit a kid out of Georgia by the name of Marshall Pritchett. And he made his second unofficial visit to South Florida this weekend. The Canes made a big move with him, Stephen. You spoke to him. Tell us a little bit about the feedback you got from Pritchett and where you think this is going with him and the other tight ends Miami's recruiting.
Yeah, I think that visit this weekend went very, very well for Marshall Pritchett. As you said, Miami's really zeroing in on a lot of really top-tier tight ends in this year's class, which, and to be frank, I've been kind of surprised to see that this many, really top-of-the-line blue-chip guys who play tight end have Miami this high on their radar, considering that, Cam McCormick was not exactly, a featured member of this offense a season ago. And last year, I can definitely tell you that, the fact that Miami's tight end was not used more in the offense did end up impacting the way that some recruits ended up seeing Miami. Some tight end recruits ended up seeing Miami as opposed to previously. And believe me, I know there were not, a tons of pluses from about the Josh Gaddis offense. But one thing that several parents told me of some of these tight ends was they kind of liked the fact that in Gaddis's offense before the coordinator change, they liked that Will Mallory was Miami's leading receiver. They liked how featured that position was, and it wasn't really featured a ton last year. But Brock Schott and Marshall Pritchett, I think, are two guys that we can squarely put on our big board right now. Marshall Pritchett is the guy who just got down to Miami this past weekend. Miami's a really major contender for him, along with South Carolina, North Carolina, and Michigan. Although right now we're hearing a little bit more from South Carolina and North Carolina than we are on Michigan at the moment. He's originally from South Carolina. Now he goes to high school in Georgia. But Shane Beamer has done a very, very good job recruiting him early on. Mac Brown up in North Carolina has done a pretty good job recruiting him as well. He took an unofficial visit to North Carolina last weekend, leading into this weekend, and he's expected to get down to South Carolina at some point in the future. Now, Marshall, he's actually aiming for a relatively early commitment. He wants to commit at some point in March. I asked him, what if, none of these schools are really able to clearly separate themselves? And he said, well, if that were to be the case, then I think I would push it back. However, I think one of these schools probably is going to separate themselves. And he's pretty confident that he's going to have some clarity on who he needs to select in March. Brock Schott, on the other hand, four-star tight end out of Indiana, he's not going to be coming down to Miami until March 23rd. Miami is absolutely well in the mix for him, very, very high on his radar. Mario Cristobal and Kevin Beard went up to Indiana last week, saw Brock, paid him an in-school visit, saw Brock Schott, took pictures with him, the whole shebang. and it's definitely making a strong impression on Brock. However, the other programs that he's really, really interested in right now, I mean, what they do is produce tight ends. He's interested in Iowa, which, I mean, I can't remember the last time I heard of a Miami-Iowa recruiting battle, and Wisconsin. And Iowa and Wisconsin obviously are two programs that are pretty well known for developing elite tight ends. I mean, Iowa these past few years, the past decade really has basically kind of turned into tight end U. But Brock definitely likes Miami. Miami's got a ton of appeal to him. And Marshall really likes Miami a lot. Miami has a ton of appeal to him too. Miami is definitely, I think this weekend visit really solidified that Miami is going to be one of those big, big names for Marshall whenever he actually does get ready to commit. He wants to get back down to Miami at some point. Whether it's going to be this spring or maybe even over the summer for an official visit, he does want to go ahead and return, which I think is, great news if you're a Canes fan. But right now, I'm really, really curious to see what South Carolina's response to this unofficial Miami visit is going to be for Marshall Pritchett, because as I said, I think South Carolina is absolutely a school that you're going to need to keep a very, very close eye on in this mix. And I would expect whenever he does eventually get down to South Carolina, that they're going to do everything they can to make a strong impression.
Now, an awful lot of recruiting is going on in Georgia. We're seeing a lot. Luke Nickel is one, Pritchett's another one. And yet another that we have a story on the website about right now is linebacker Montrez Walker. He's from Buford, Georgia, and a kid that is getting recruited by a whole slew of schools. He was committed to Michigan. He now is not committed to Michigan. Clearly, Miami is very high up. He's named the top 12. The Canes are in it. Outwardly declared to us that Miami is definitely one of the front runners, if not the front runner. You could check it all out in the story that's on the website. But Stephen, it's pretty clear that Montrez Walker is unquestionably one of the key recruits in this cycle at linebacker.
Yeah, Miami and Walker really started talking last fall. We kind of saw that communication pick up during the fall after he decommitted from Michigan back in September. And Miami has been a school that Walker has maintained a very, very high level of interest in for quite some time. He actually wants to go ahead and take an official visit down to Miami now. Whether or not that all shakes out, I mean, we really have no idea at this point, because, at this moment we are going to get, quite a few kids that are going to say that they probably want to take official visits to the U. Like I said, have no idea if that's going to end up working out or not, but he absolutely has a lot of interest in Miami. He's also planning on getting out to Ole Miss on February 3rd. And there's a few other schools that are in the mix too. Colorado's one, Tennessee's another. Right now, I think he's listed at around like a top 500 prospect. I want to say like number 450 or 470 in the country or something like that. But you look at his offer list and it is pretty sizable. Miami's in his top 12 right now. I would probably expect Miami to end up being in his top 6 whenever he announces that, which might be coming in either February or March. But right now, it's probably looking like Walker's most likely going to commit sometime during the summer, or maybe right before the start of his fall football season. So we are going to have a while, and we know that there are a bunch of other schools that are expecting to host him and are excited to be hosting him here in the next few months.
All right, so a lot of action in Georgia, no question about it. But Miami even sent defensive line coach Joe Salavea all the way out to California in recent days, and he extended a formal offer to Danville, California, San Raymond Valley 4-star linebacker Marco Jones. While he was out there, Jones has more than 20 offers to programs that include Alabama, Texas, Notre Dame, Oregon. Jones is going to visit Miami this weekend for Junior Day. And that Junior Day list, like I said at the beginning of the show, is really, really, really cranking up. It is going to be a huge weekend down at the U. We will be all over it for you. But Stephen, just the fact that they're still able to consistently go out west and get some of the top kids on the West Coast to show this level of interest, I think has to bode well for this recruiting cycle as well.
Yeah, I think a lot of what we're seeing is Mario Cristobal kind of calling on some of his old ties from whenever he was at Oregon, and whenever he was at Oregon, he was primarily recruiting the state of California. I spoke to the coach of a 2026 kid that got offered the other week. And he talked about, I remember whenever Mario Cristobal was at Oregon and he would come down here to try to recruit Cam Rising, who's currently the starting quarterback over at Utah. I hadn't even realized that Oregon was a school that wanted Cam Rising coming out of college. But, I talk to a lot of these kids and I hear them say, well, we hear about Coach Cristobal and the stuff they did at Oregon and the way that he recruited, these schools and these regions and all this stuff whenever he was back at Oregon. But I mean, one thing that you'll also notice with Mario is he's kind of using the West Coast and really most states outside of Florida and some of the state of Georgia as kind of almost supplementary basically to what he wants to be, his primary recruiting pipeline down here in South Florida, in Miami and the state of the U and all that stuff. And then obviously, as we said, doing a bunch to get guys from the state of Georgia as well. I mean, we are seeing a little bit of interest in some West Coast prospects. We saw some interest in West Coast guys last year too. I mean, first guy that comes off the dome for me is Aiden Breland, who I think ultimately ended up signing with Oregon. He was a 4-star defensive lineman. The year before that, Collins Achiampong, who now is actually back at UCLA.
And Cyrus Moss, who was also sent to the portal. The California guys aren't doing so great though.
Wasn't Cyrus Moss from Bishop Gorman over in Vegas?
I think he was from California. Maybe I'm getting confused. I don't know. I'll look it up.
But either way, I mean,
point is they're coming from out west and they're not.
They are grabbing a handful of guys from out west. They're showing some interest in some dudes from out west, but they really are using them almost as kind of like supplement, to kind of supplement what they want to be their primary recruiting base down here. We're talking about a defensive lineman there, a linebacker here, a wide receiver there. I do think it's pretty clear that the majority of Miami's focus is going to continue to be kind of in the South Florida area.
Yeah. By the way, you're right. He is from Bishop Gorman in Vegas, not California. Smack myself for making that mistake. But anyway, the point I was really thinking was these guys coming from out west have got to do a better job. It's like it's one thing to go all the way out there and recruit guys, but they got to make it. Like if they're not going to make it, then you don't need to waste your time in California. There's plenty of players here in Florida and Georgia. All right. So while I'm smacking myself back into shape, before Steven starts smacking me into shape, you notice he very subtly worked into his last little soliloquy there that Miami's doing a lot of recruiting in Florida too, which they are. And so I'm going to talk a little bit about a few of those stories that are on the website. Today we catch up with the coach of Palm Beach Central, 4-star wide receiver Waden Charles. He's a Miami commit, and we caught up with his coach just to, get a different viewpoint on how he's doing. I mean, we could talk to Waden Charles 50 times between now and signing day in December, and we probably will. But it's nice to hear what the people working with him think about him. So we've got a story on that on the website today. We also have a story with Miami Central 4-star defensive lineman Randy Adarica. He is a top 300 right now, 2025 prospect. The Hurricanes have done a lot to stand out in his picture since he landed an offer last year. We catch up with him and bring you an update on him. We also have an update with Vero Beach product. He's a linebacker. TJ Alford, another guy that everybody around the country is trying to recruit. Ohio State, Tennessee, Florida all visited him in the past week, in addition to Miami. So that gives you an idea of how competitive that's going to be. Alfred's going to be another one that's on Miami's campus this weekend, Stephen, and clearly a very high priority recruit up there in Vero Beach. How do you feel Miami's doing to this point?
I feel like right now it's a battle between Ohio State and Miami. Right now, if I had to pick one, I'd say Ohio State's the front runner, but I would not say Miami is far behind in second place at all. He's got a ton of ties to the U. His dad's a Miami fan. He's originally from Miami. Vero Beach, I think that there are a lot of people at Vero Beach who kind of like the idea of him being a Cane. He's developed a great relationship with the staff. His relationship with Derek Nicholson pretty much goes back a full year. Whenever you actually look back at when this relationship started, I mean, it really started building, last year about March or so. And Miami's been really consistent with him the whole time. He really likes Derek Nicholson. He really likes Mario Cristobal. But James Laurinaitis over at Ohio State has made some very, very good impressions as well. And Ohio State is treating him exactly the same as Miami is. He is exactly as big a priority for Ohio State as he is for Miami. Ryan Day and James Laurinaitis were down in Vero Beach, I think, like 2 or 3 days before Mario Cristobal and Derek Nicholson had a chance to get down there. Now, right now, I think that, I think there's still a pretty good chance that either of these two schools could ultimately end up landing him. But man, this really is turning into a heavyweight fight. And, quite frankly, one that Miami's pretty sick of fighting, whenever you consider that they had to go up against Ohio State for Jeremiah Smith a season ago in a battle that came down literally until the second Jeremiah submitted his signing papers to Ohio State. And then after that, and then before that, Miami had to hold off Ohio State whenever they tried to pluck Chance Robinson out of their own backyard. So I think Miami has, quite frankly, seen enough of Ohio State at this point. But I think that this is kind of a big recruiting battle for Miami for a bunch of reasons. And I think one of the really, really big ones is going to be if Miami can, in fact, go ahead and get TJ Alford in the end. And, I know it's only January. We're talking about December here, but TJ is a top 50 recruit in the country. If Miami can get TJ, I think this is going to be kind of a statement recruiting win that signals to Ohio State, stay out of our backyard. You're not going to win a recruiting battle here. You are not going to out-recruit us in our own pipeline. You are not going to come into our backyard and steal our recruits. I mean, whenever Miami is actually humming, whenever this program has elite talent acquisition and they're recruiting at that level and they're competing for national championships and ACC titles, I mean, no one dares go into Miami's backyard and try to pluck their talent. I mean, it's like USC back in its heyday whenever Pete Carroll was there. No one from the SEC dared to try to go out to Los Angeles and try to pluck a quarterback, a receiver, an offensive lineman from Pete Carroll's backyard. Just like before that, no one dared trying to go to Miami or trying to go to South Florida and pick a player out of Miami's backyard unless it was maybe Florida or Florida State. None of these other out-of-state schools were coming by and getting and acquiring this level of talent. So I think the TJ Alford thing is going to be really, really big for a number of reasons. Because last year with Jeremiah Smith signing with Ohio State, I think that was basically a signal to Ohio State of, okay, we can still get a guy down there when we really, really, really need him. And for this, and for TJ Alford, I think this is a lot of Miami saying, hey, I know you think you can, but no, you can't.
Yeah, so this will be one of the measurement recruitments in this cycle. There's no doubt about it. Let me just take a minute. If you're on YouTube right now and you like this show, like this channel, you like Steven, hit your subscribe, hit your like button. It helps us with the algorithms at YouTube in increasing our audience so that Stephen Wagner becomes a household name all across the United States of America, right there with Taylor Swift. And if you're not yet a subscriber to CaneSport.com, let me throw this up on the screen right now. We have a special offer for you, $1 for your first 2 months. Come to the site, CaneSport.com. Use the code CANES1 when you get your subscription. You'll get your first 2 months for $1. We would love to have you as part of our fan community and website. We do everything that we can do every single day to enhance your fan experience to the max. And we think you would love being part of our family at CaneSport.com. So if you're not yet a subscriber, go check it out. Another guy that we cover on the website today is a running back from American Heritage who also is getting an enormous amount of attention. He's the number 28 recruit in the state of Florida right now. The number 16 running back in the country in the rankings, and that is Byron Lewis. Miami has made him feel, though, I just told you the rankings, the Canes are making him feel like he is the top running back in the country. Okay. So he may not be universally looked at as number one. He's only number 16 in the On3 recruiting rankings. But he feels like the Hurricanes are treating him like he's the best in the country. Steven, that can only pay dividends as this recruitment moves forward.
Yeah, so Byron, he comes out of the same high school that Mark Fletcher came out of. He still knows, or he knows Mark. He still talks to Mark from time to time. They'll talk about each other's performances and stuff like that. Mark will try to, give him little pieces of advice here and there whenever he gets the opportunity. But I think Byron is, I do think that Byron is ultimately going to, like the same way that I said this with JoJo Trader, I think Byron ultimately will end up being a Cane. And that's just my way too early prediction as we're sitting here in January, almost 12 months before signing day in December. Or wait, actually we might be 11 months away now. I need to, I'm going to need to, I'm going to,
we're actually probably 10 3/4, I guess.
Yeah, something like that. I'm going to need to look at a calendar.
Well, almost 10 3/4 at the end of this week. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm going to need to look at a calendar. But anyway, I digress. But
that's right. I need to look at a map and realize that there's a difference between Las Vegas and California too. So we'll both work on our game here in the next 24 hours or so. But anyway, go ahead.
But yeah, I do think that Byron Lewis ultimately will end up a Cane the same way that I thought JoJo Trader would end up a Cane. It's a way too early prediction. But he really likes Miami. Miami's treated him very well. He's developed very, very good relationships with the staff. And I really think the whole idea of staying home, playing for your hometown school, and potentially getting early playing time is going to pay really, really big dividends in his recruitment. I don't think enough people are appreciating just how much Mark Fletcher's production as a freshman is having a positive ripple effect for Miami in recruiting running backs, because that sends a message to all other prospective running backs in the 2020 or in future classes that if you want to go to Miami as a true freshman, you will have an opportunity to compete for playing time and you will have an opportunity to be productive because true freshman running backs can have success at Miami. I mean, Mark Fletcher, I personally thought he was the best guy in the room by the end of the year. And I personally think that this year he's going to be, the best guy in the room. And I think that weighs very, very heavily with a lot of recruits. It definitely weighs heavily with a lot of these South Florida kids who are looking out and seeing, hey, man, this guy who I literally played youth football against, he's getting to start for Miami as a freshman, and they're coaching him really well. They're developing him really well, and they're putting him in a lot of positions to succeed. And I really do think that's going to play a factor in Byron Lewis's recruitment. Ohio State is another school that is pretty high on his radar as well. But right now, I do think that it's possible that Ohio State ends up looking more in-state for the running back position in their 2025 class, which I think would open the door very, very wide for Miami to be able to go ahead and secure Byron Lewis in this class. Again, way too early, but I love the opportunity that Miami's going to have with Byron Lewis, especially given the way that they've recruited American Heritage.
All right, so we're going to be bringing you all kinds of updates this week. Shouldn't be a ton more transfer portal action. Maybe a wide receiver. Obviously, they are trying to get Nate Aleppo. Right now, they're sitting with 10 new players from the transfer portal. So, not messing around in using the portal to try to improve this team. Looks like that'll end up at like 11 or 12 by the time they're done. So, there's going to be a lot of pressure on spring practice coming up because there's going to be a number of spots that need to be cleared to make room for all these players coming in. So, going to be very interesting to watch that as well. But for this week, we're going to be we're building towards the Battle 7-on-7 Saturday and Sunday down here, and of course Miami Junior Day on Saturday. We'll have tons of advanced stories for you, lots of coverage and insights. So make sure you stay tuned to CaneSport.com all week long. And remember, if you're not yet a subscriber, you can go to the website, use that code Canes1, and join our site here for getting your first 2 months for $1. So that's going to do it for today for Good Morning CaneSport. We thank you so much for starting out your day with us. For Stephen Wagner, I'm Gary Ferman. Have a great day, everybody, and we'll see you next time.